Hi, everybody. Okay, I'm going to record so that I can send you the slides. I'm going to do a PowerPoint for you. Thank you so much, Aviva. And thank you, anybody who wants to come on video, by the way. I love having participants. Otherwise, I get to stare at myself the whole time. That's
Right.
never fun. So as Aviva said, I'm the funding specialist for Teach Florida. And basically what we do, we're part of the OU, and we advocate to make Jewish education affordable and accessible. And we work at the state level and the federal level with federal and state programs to try to maximize funding for our families. And I personally have benefited from these scholarships. I'm going to talk tonight mostly about state scholarships. And I know there's some timelines coming up, some timelines maybe that have already passed, but I want to make sure that you have the information either for this year or for next year, so you can get the most amount of funding for your children for their education. And yeah, so that's what we do, and that's why I'm here tonight. As we go along, if you have questions, I find that if you put it in the chat, I can kind of space it out during the slides. I can kind of embed it into the presentation, and then we'll do a Q&A at the end. Just to start off, if you can use the raise hand icon emoji or whatever. How many of you are familiar with the Stepup scholarships and the AAA scholarships for education? Anybody? Okay, I don't see anybody. So, okay, great. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we're going to go ahead and get started. We'll talk about that funding. I'll share with you also some federal funding as well. Okay. If you could keep yourself muted, like I say, unless there's a particular question you want to jump in and ask, I'll just help with the flow of the recording as well. All right, so from the beginning. All right, so what we're going to talk about tonight is state and federal funds, and mostly state scholarships for education. And because this is primarily preschool, I'm going to focus in on more the disability scholarship, which starts for children age 3 by September 1st. But we'll also touch on the other scholarship because it will impact potentially other children in your family. And basically the purpose of what I do is to promote choice and affordability of education, of private Jewish education. And we do a lot of work around state funding, federal funding, and some local funding. Okay, there's 2 different state scholarships because I don't want you to make, I haven't made Aviva dizzy already, but I don't want to make everybody else dizzy. So I'm trying to break it down. The first thing is really important is just to understand the different types of scholarships, what they're called, who's running those scholarships, so that we're all talking about the same thing. So there's 2 different types of state scholarships for private school students that I advise on. One is income-based scholarship, which I put a little / sibling scholarship. We'll talk about what that means. And the other one is disability-based. So either you qualify based on income or a sibling, which we'll talk about, or if a child has a disability. Those are the two types of state scholarships that we work with. So they're income-based scholarships, and you know how government programs love acronyms for everything. So you're going to see acronyms that are like, let's say FTC, FES-EO. So I want you to know what that means. So basically the income-based scholarship for children to attend private school, it's not just Jewish private school, but I advise Jewish private schools and families, originally it was called the Florida Tax Credit Scholarship, and it was large corporations would give their money and get tax credits for giving money to a scholarship organization, which would then be used for lower income families to go to private school. And that was called FTC. That was the original scholarship. Then they ran out of funding. And because this became such an important and useful program, they went back to the legislature and they said, we want more money for this program. And then they started to put money into the state budget, which became what's called Family Empowerment Scholarship. And it used to have it was higher income families, a little bit more than the Florida tax credit. You also had to come from public school and all other kinds of things. But now for all purposes, when they expanded the bill last year, there was a big scholarship expansion. Then they made it exactly the same. And I'm going to show you a chart of how you can qualify, but you qualify the same. And when you go on the sites to apply, it looks exactly the same. But just to know that when they say FTC, that means it's coming from the tax credits versus FES, which came from the state budget. And it's called FES-EO because it's called Family Empowerment Education Options. So that's why you'll see on the letter, it'll say FES-EO or FTC. Now, why am I telling you about it? There's only one reason that it might matter to you, and I will tell you what that is. Again, this is income-based, and so it's not so applicable to preschool, but this is for children who are school age. Then there's a disability scholarship. This one is going to be more of what we're going to focus on tonight. This is for children, it used to be for children who had very severe disabilities, so kids with Down syndrome and severe autism. When they expanded the bill in 21-22 last year, and that's some of the work that we've done in our advocacy side, they now included more disability categories of things that you might see in a typical child, a speech impairment, a language impairment, a child who may be receiving OT for fine motor or gross motor, PT, ADHD, which is now more prevalent than ever. I don't know why. I don't know if it's our diets. I don't know what it is. Learning disabilities, but things that you might see in a more typical classroom environment. Now is all covered under what's called the family empowerment, because it was in the state budget, unique abilities. And a lot of people, I always put formerly Gardner because that was the original name. When it had more severe disabilities, it was called Gardner. Now it's called FES-UA, as it shows on the top. Now, a lot of people have heard that there's another disability scholarship, and it gets very confusing, called McKay. And there used to be, but starting this year, 22-23, McKay Scholarship is no longer going to be its own category because it's going to merge under this umbrella of family empowerment unique abilities. So if you had a child that attended a public school at any point and got an IEP, got an evaluation, an IEP, and got a category, or even a 504 for a child maybe has a medical condition like asthma, you might have just gotten a when that happened, you would get a McKay scholarship when you'd come from public school, but now the Family Empowerment Scholarship has taken over that space. So if a child comes from public school, they will apply for the Family Empowerment Unique Ability Scholarship. So again, that's just some of the terminology. Now, people might have heard Step Up for Students, and this is where Step Up for Students come in. These two scholarships, the income-based scholarships and the disability-based scholarship, are run by scholarship funding organizations. It's not Department of Education. They're involved in the process, but the people who are running these scholarships are these SFOs, we call them. Now, Step Up for Students is the more known scholarship organization, probably because it's been around longer and they are a lot better at their process because I guess they also have more staffing, they have more money, but they do a much better job. We'll talk in another slide why you might choose either one or the other. But when you want to apply for either of these two scholarships, you would go to these sites, stepupforstudents.org or AAA-scholarships.org. These are the sites, and I actually put the links into the slide so you can go ahead and access it through here. Okay. One other really big piece of information that's important to know when they did the expansion is that they included something called the sibling provision, which really blows my mind that they put it in there because this really opens up scholarships to so many more people. Let me explain what I mean. The sibling provision works for the income-based scholarship. So if you qualify based on income, then you only have to qualify once. So maybe after COVID, you had a bad year, or maybe your wife went on maternity leave, or maybe you moved and only one of you was working. We'll talk about what you have to show for income, but maybe just for a period of time, your income was lower and now you qualified. You never again have to show income documentation if your children stay in private school. And then if you have a child who becomes school age, they were 2 and now they're 5, that child, when that child you want to put them on your application, you also still do not need to provide the income documentation. Sibling provision says if it's somebody qualified in your family, once the other children become school age, they get on without income documentation, which again is that's the hard part of the income-based scholarship, is that you need to provide the income that fits into the household size and income on their chart. The other piece is really the part that blew open the scholarships, is a sibling provision that said, if you have one child that gets a disability scholarship, and a disability scholarship is more money than the income-based scholarship, and it has more uses, then anybody that's school age in your family automatically will get, when you apply, the income-based scholarship without having to show income documentation. You could be way over the income threshold. All of your children, if you apply for the income-based scholarship with the specific instructions for siblings, you do not have to show income documentation. So your one child gets $9,000. The other children that are school age get $7,000 each until they graduate from 12th grade, which is really where people have gone. It's like Black Friday when scholarships open on the sites, and people call me, I can't get on. It's just bombarded, and that's why. It's a lot of money that our families can use for Jewish private school tuition and other things that we'll talk about. All right, so I mentioned that there's FES-EO and FTC. There's only one difference in terms of why you might choose one or the other. It only has to do with Florida virtual classes, so I'm going to keep it on the slide, but it's not something that you need to pay attention to because that's not really what we're talking about for preschool. But basically, they give you two classes that you don't have to pay for if you're on FTC. FES-EO, the other one, you have to self-pay for Florida virtual. We'll talk about that if you have any questions about that for an older child, but that does not so applicable for preschool. I just want you again to just reiterate the point. There are two access points for this income-based scholarship, and why this applies to your preschool child perhaps is that one is that it's needs-based, and I'll show you the chart, but more importantly is if it's a sibling of an FES-UA recipient. So if you have a 3-year-old right now or preschool right now that's 3 by September 1st and they're receiving OT services, that child, you would want to apply for this FES-UA scholarship. Even if you don't get funded and you put yourself in a priority position for an upcoming year, that means the rest of your school age children will get the other scholarship. So it's really, really important. If you know that your family, and I'm going to show you some more of the other disability categories. Some of them are like asthma or a peanut allergy that you have an EpiPen, things that you wouldn't even think would be part of the scholarship. You might want to consider taking another look. If your child had a private eval or from the district, if you went through early steps and you got an IEP, they love IEPs. That's a great document to use to qualify. So we can talk. If you have any questions, I'll show you how you can contact me and where you can get more information to see if you qualify. So why would you choose Stepup or AAA scholarships? I told you there's two scholarship funding organizations. Why would you choose one or the other? I'm going to focus on the disability scholarship more, but the main reasons for Stepup, and you could take a look at this slide more carefully, is that Stepup's processing time is way shorter. Their communication is a lot better. So if you want to go on their chat, there's an online chat up at all times. If it's not an online chat, it's an offline chat, but that means you're just emailing them. So that's a great feature that they have. I don't usually recommend going to customer service, especially during hot scholarship season, but that would be the last call. If you really can't get through to somebody and you need something answered, I'll also share with you my contact information as well. I train the schools that are our member schools, and we have 30 schools in South Florida. Most of the main schools in Florida are one of Teach Florida's member schools. So I train schools how to help parents through this process as well. And then I was very excited. Stepup actually released demo videos. So if you have questions on how to fill out the application, there's demo videos, how to set up accounts and fill it out. So I'm really excited to share that. It'll be in a follow-up email with this recording. So for Stepup, you give last 30 days of income. So if you're employed, that's your pay stubs. If you're self-employed, it's usually a profit and loss or a 1099. AAA asks for your most recent tax return. They won't care if you have an extension. They want the most recent tax return. But more important, because again, we're going to focus on disability, is that Stepup needs a diagnosis letter. The scholarship law says that a doctor or psychologist must write up the letter if your child is in one of those categories that we're going to talk about, like we said, like asthma, diabetes, or any of those. When we say doctor, that could also include a psychiatrist. Anybody who has an MD after their name, any kind of specialty can write up the letter. It could even, if it's Stepup, it can even come from an out-of-state doctor if they have a current license. And if it's an evaluation, like a psych ed eval for a specific learning disability, that could come from evaluation. That doesn't have to be a letter. But I'm going to give you some more guidance in an upcoming slide of some of the diagnosis letter guidance. What Stepup has said will get you approved. When it comes to AAA scholarships, they have a diagnosis form, but AAA actually is closed for the disability scholarship because there was very few slots to begin with. Even Stepup will be starting to give out waitlist letters soon. But again, it's a first come, first serve scholarship. And every year they only put out about 4,500 new slots. So the best thing you can do is get on a wait list and get yourself in line. And last year they even had supplemental money where a couple, about 5 or so families, and they told me in total about 100 families got a supplemental money all the way at the end of the year. So it's important, if you know you have a child that is in one of the disability categories, and I'll show you what those categories look like, to go on even tomorrow morning, I'll tell you what documents you're going to need to get it processing. And again, I gave you the information about contacting them. Open enrollment, like I said, AAA is open for, income and unique abilities, they're open there for income. However, they close for disability scholarships. Stepup is open for income. There's no deadline for them, but they'll prorate you at a certain point. So right now, the deadline for 100% funding for the income-based scholarship is that your child has to be enrolled in the school's portal. After you get your award letter, you send it to the school. You have to be enrolled by August 1st, which really means July 1st, 31st, 12 p.m. So that one, if you apply, you want to send that over to your school. That's for the income-based scholarship. Now, for the unique ability scholarship, like I said, they're open now. They're sending out waitlist letters soon. But I got families on to the scholarship last December, and now they got their award letters now. And so they were only waited a few months. They did wait. They didn't get it last year, but they were priority status, and they're going to get funded. So it's important to get on if you can. Just really quickly, again, I don't want to spend too much time, but this is the chart. You have it in the slides. Every year it increases by 25%. Last year, family 4 was just 99,000. Now family 4 making 111,000 can qualify for an income-based scholarship. Eventually, if this keeps increasing and we keep pushing and advocating for that, it will be universal scholarships. And in about 10 years, every income bracket will be covered in these charts. Once you're in, always in, you have to reapply, but you don't have to requalify, and they never ran out of funding. Remember, this is also the sibling scholarship. Okay. I just want to tell you again, really quickly, this income base, you have to be a Florida resident. So you either show your driver's license, utility bill, or your mortgage. You have to be in a private school, and you have to be in a qualifying private school. So your school has to be compliant with the Florida Department of Education. I meant to put the link in here. I'm going to try to do it before I send it out. There is a link where you can check if your school is, but your school is. And basically, schools generally know if they're compliant to accept scholarships. Your child needs to be 5 by September 1st, this entering kindergarten or above. That's a non-negotiable, and that's for the income-based scholarship, and your household income meets the thresholds for your family size. What can you use? Basically, the amount of the award is about $7,000 to $7,500. It depends on county and grade. It's based on calculations, public school student calculations, how much they get in their county. And we expect to see an increase of about $300 in this upcoming year. Okay, the main event, Family Empowerment Scholarship Unique Abilities. Like I said, every year, 4,500 new slots. So there's probably not very many left at this point. Still go ahead and apply. Still go ahead and ask me those questions. Still get on as soon as you can if you think your child may qualify. Once you qualify for a disability category, you do not need to requalify. So that's the other good thing. You come in as a renewal every year. and it's a very short application when you have to renew. The only category that does not requalify after a certain age is the one that's for OT and PT only. So if you have a high-risk child that's a 3 to 5 year old category, then you have to find a new category. Or let's say you have a child that gets on the disability scholarship at 3 and they have siblings that are older on the income-based scholarship, and they get on only because this child has a disability. This umbrella, family empowerment, if your child then is a high-risk child and is turning 6 by September 1st that year, since their siblings on this family empowerment income now, the child can go on to the income one and get $7,000 instead of $9,000, but you wouldn't lose all the scholarships. There is no income requirement for the scholarship. This is disability-based only. Here's the criteria. And this criteria is, I'm gonna just talk about the documents you're gonna need. So in order for you to be processing, there are 3 things you need to show. Resident of Florida, just like before, your driver's license, mortgage, lease, utility bill. Your child is age 3 by September 1st, so that's why you're gonna need to probably show them a birth certificate. Your student has to attend a private school or homeschool. And again, it must be a qualifying private school. Now, this only applies if you want to use your scholarship for tuition, which about 90% of people do, but we'll talk about what that means. But the third document that you need is the diagnosis letter or form. So if you go on and fill out the electronic portion of the application, and I'm going to show you, I actually am going to put up my application so you can see it. Once you finish putting in your information, a new tab comes up that says print and send documents. If you don't upload your residency documents, the birth certificate, and the diagnosis letter, your application is not starting to process. Or if they put you on hold, it means you also are not processing. That means you're missing some kind of documentation, or they don't like the diagnosis documentation you gave, which puts you back in the queue. You're not getting a first come, first serve. So it's really important you get those 3 documents right. Okay, now the spending uses of the educational savings account is not just as a voucher. This, just to tell you, the award amount is in the 9,000 to 96. For some younger children, it's in the 99 this year because we're expected to increase by $3,000, so close to $10,000 award. Now, this can be used for, because the structure of this particular scholarship is different, when you get it, the award letter that you get, right now they're only giving out eligibility letters. They're not giving out funding letters. And actually none of the funding numbers that anybody sees on any letter is correct because they've not released the new numbers. Just, I think a week ago, the governor signed the budget. So now the money is in there for these scholarships, but we don't know the amounts yet. There are 3 different things you could use the money for. And when you get the letter, if you're going to use it for tuition, then you give the letter, which will have an FES student ID number, to the school to request payment. But there are other uses for the scholarship. You can use it for services. You can use it for educational materials and curriculum. However, just keep in mind, you still have a tuition obligation. So most people choose to use it first for tuition so they don't have to think about it. I know on a quarterly basis, I'm going to approve $2,500 or $1,800, or no, it's usually about 20, right, for splitting up 10, about $2,500 or close to that on a quarterly basis. And I don't have to think about it, and it's part of my tuition contract. Most people would rather, the money's going to come from somewhere. Either you're going to pay for the services out of pocket or pay it through the Gardner funds. Again, if there's anything extra, depending on how you negotiate your tuition contract, is whether or not there may be some extra funds. And definitely use your scholarship as part of your negotiation with the school for your tuition. But again, it's slightly different. You're going to see when you go on your portal, you're going to see your balance. You're going to see what your scholarship is. And the other income-based one, you wouldn't see that because that's just a voucher that goes straight to the school. But again, keep in mind what you have promised to the school, because you're going to be responsible to keep up that commitment in some way, whether it comes out of your bank account or it comes out of the scholarship. Okay, here's the diagnosis letter guidance. This is this is probably the most important slide of everything I'm going to show you. It must be written by a doctor or psychologist, like we said today. So that could be a pediatrician. That could be, it can't be the physician assistant. It can't be a nurse. It can't be a social worker. It has to be an MD, PhD, right, a PhD or MD. or a psychologist. Now, the letter should include the qualifying disability title. This is probably the most important one of all. It should, I'm going to show you the different disability categories. If the disability is called speech impairment and the doctor writes speech delay, they're not going to approve it. So, and again, most people will get their speech evaluation not done by a doctor or psychologist. It'll come from a speech or language pathologist or a speech and language therapist. So what you do with those kinds of evaluations from an OT or a speech therapist is you bring it to your pediatrician, who then writes a letter saying, this child by name, birth date, has been recommended or evaluated and is recommended to receive, either is receiving services or recommended to receive speech services to address their speech impairment. Or this child is recommended to get language services to address their language impairment. The language of the disability needs to be in there. For example, ADHD, a lot of people call me, this is one of the most common questions I got in the beginning. It is not one of the listed categories because it falls under other health impairment. So when the doctor writes it, it's important that he uses the wording, this child is being seen for ADHD under the other health impairment disability. Use the words of the title. It's very, very, very important. And the processing actually goes a lot faster when your letter has the terminology. Now, again, a doctor is not going to write a letter for you without any proof. So your child has to have some sort of evaluation or some kind of document showing that there is a concern, that there is a delay, you know? So if it's a delay, if it's OT, it will be a high-risk child, because it's a high-risk child is a delay in an area of development, and physical development is what causes, a delay in physical development causes issues with fine motor, gross motor coordination, or sensory processing, the areas of the OT. What I was going to tell you too is if you have district documents, even from out of state, an IEP within 3 years, they will accept. They're one of the preferred documents that they like to have for diagnosis. Okay, I'm going to just highlight the 6 new eligibilities because they're the most common. And then I'm also going to bring you a link to my site, the Teach Florida site. I know I take it very personally because I'm always updating it on the back end, but I'm going to show you where you can find some more information about different disability categories. So speech impairment, obviously, is a speech or language pathologist, language impairment. A lot of schools will give you screenings in preschool and offer screenings in preschool. And if I was a parent, I would definitely opt to get screening so that if your child is identified with a delay, you can use it to get the language or speech impairment diagnosis. Orthopedic impairment are things like hip dysplasia, scoliosis. It's more of a genetic kind of issue. But there are a lot of children that, surprisingly, I get a lot of calls about children with hip dysplasia. Specific learning disability is one that would come from an evaluation, either from a private or a public school evaluation. Other health impairment has to do with a child's vitality, a child's focus. And so if anything impacts that, I even had a doctor who wrote up something called abdominal migraines. I didn't even know there was a thing. And a child, it falls under, because other health impairment has to do with a child's alertness and vitality. If a doctor was willing, the doctor wrote that this is an other health impairment. She felt that it impacted. So other health impairment is like the catch-all category of a lot of different things. Number 6 is one that's near and dear to my heart, emotional and behavioral disabilities. So children who suffer from anxiety, any of the mental health areas, depression, behavior issues, oppositional defiant, OCD, anything that would have a child potentially seeing a therapist. Again, if the psychiatrist feels comfortable, the important thing is to use the terminology or emotional and behavioral disabilities. But again, we all know that anxiety is a real thing. It impacts a child's education. I'm really near and dear to my heart that if a child has that, you should get the scholarship to address. And we know how expensive in Florida behavior therapy is, even like any kind of play therapy, it's a real expense. Like I said, this catch-all category, we have ADHD falls in here, asthma, epilepsy, even cancer, God forbid, falls under other health impairment, diabetes. But there are many others. If your child has some sort of diagnosis that impacts their learning and their ability to focus, their ability to participate in the same level, potentially it could fall in this other health impairment category. Rare disease, a click here, you can go here, it's A to Z. These are all kinds of things that maybe also genetic type conditions, growth hormone deficiency, rare heart disease, pediatric Crohn's. You'd be surprised what falls under here. So I tell parents, if you're not sure if there's some kind of genetic issue, even something minor in the family or something your child was born with, you can check to see if it falls in this category. Like I said, the high-risk child, this is your screenings that you get in preschool, and always opt in. It's a recommendation I give highly to parents. If you're being told by your school, we're going to have somebody come out and take a look and see if there's any delay, this would be your high-risk child. So child with any delay in communication, cognition, or physical development, ages 3 to 5 only, that child can get the high-risk diagnosis, which, like I said, after the child is turning 6 by September 1st, that year, they would no longer fall in this category. And so either they get one of the other categories, or they get onto maybe the other scholarship if their other siblings are on already. You can apply for multiple disability categories, but the amount is still the same. It's only when you have a child with very severe disabilities, like a child in a wheelchair who has a feeding tube, who has cerebral palsy, then there is more funding higher than that 9,000 in that like 18,000 or 25,000. But you're talking about children you generally would not see in a typical classroom environment. But if you feel like your child has more than just the typical amount of need for support, definitely feel free to reach out. There are ways to get additional funding, but it would need to be a more severe situation. Important reminders, each child can only receive one scholarship. You can apply for more than one. So let's say you get the income one, but you also know that there's a disability category that you know of. You can apply for more. You just can't accept both scholarships. So you can apply for income and disability. And then when you get the award letter, if you're waitlisted for the disability, then that's fine. And you can take the income one. But if you get a choice, most people will choose the disability categories because it's a higher scholarship. The scholarship cannot be combined with VPK. So this is really important. Aviva and I were talking about this. If you are getting VPK and you would need to let them know you're opting out of VPK as soon as you get the eligibility letter, because after you get the eligibility letter, they go ahead and cross-check with the Department of Education, make sure your child does not attend the public school, and also that your child doesn't have VPK. So if your child has VPK at that point, then you might lose the scholarship. But you don't need to do anything unless you get that eligibility letter. Otherwise, you can leave VPK alone, because I know a lot of you have already applied or are in process. So I'm not saying to just, and again, just keep in mind with VPK, you can get back on at a later time. With this scholarship, you can't. And also VPK Aviva is how much now? Is what, 2,000?
$250 a month, about $250 to $260 a month.
Okay. Versus this scholarship that's 9,000. So most people will opt in. The other thing to keep in mind is that if your child is coming from public school, then you don't count, your slot is always going to be available to you. If your child is a child of either law enforcement or military, you also have a guaranteed slot. It doesn't really apply so much to our schools. I only met 1 or 2 families that fall in that category, but just keep that in mind. You would not need to worry about a slot in that case. Any questions? I'm going to take a little pause here before I go into federal funding. I know, just like what happened when I've gone to schools and done the trainings, it's a lot of information and you almost need like a day or 2 to process. And I end up getting a lot of questions after, which is totally fine. And like I say, I'm going to send you all this information for you to look at the recording. But please feel free to go ahead and put something in the chat, or even if somebody wanted to ask a question, or I see that's something in the chat. You can apply. I just had a question right now. If you can apply for both Stepup and AAA, you absolutely can. You just can't, like I say, accept from both of them. And again, it's just a matter of sitting down and the time. They take about an hour to do each. And then you have to also upload different types of documents. So just put aside some time if you want to go ahead and apply to both. But because Stepup has been the better scholarship organization in terms of my partnership with them, so I know people all the way to the top of Stepup. So if there's a problem, I can escalate it. I generally say Stepup is plan A, AAA is plan B, because I have a very hard time getting in contact with them. And so I can't help you as much, whereas Stepup I can. yeah, there's nothing wrong with going ahead and applying to both. And I used to recommend it all the time until I went through a year of scholarships and I saw how time consuming it was. Just remember, if Stepup denies your application, you could always go to AAA. But yes, the answer is yes to that.
Malka, just one thing you said with AAA, when you were talking to us, it's not computerized, it's more mail, and that's probably why it takes a lot of time.
Yeah, so and I think this year maybe they started to do some of it automated, but a lot of times you'd have to wait those 12 weeks and then it would be an award letter in the mail. So people just, like they almost thought they'd forgotten about them. Like, hello, I'm still here, I applied.
So it might take a little longer.
Yeah. Now, if somebody has, someone asked me a question about an income-based scholarship. And I have it for you, I'll go into VPK. So again, you could apply with VPK for the disability scholarship. If you were to receive an eligibility letter, you would need to contact VPK and remove that application, so it doesn't impact it once they go do the cross check. And again, the disability scholarship can start as young as 3 by September 1st. And just in terms of the other health impairments I was asking about a particular, again, I would talk to your doctor. If you're saying you have a child that has whatever kind of issue, you can talk to your pediatrician and just say, you know, I'm concerned that this impacts my child's alertness or vitality, because those are the words that really are part of other health impairment. And again, if your doctor feels like he feels comfortable writing other health impairment, that's been the guidance of Stepup. One thing that is important is if you check off the wrong box or if you put in the wrong grade, like I had said before, there's a box called print and send documents. After you finish the electronic portion, there's another tab. I'm gonna actually take a little, I'm gonna stop my, hold on. I'm gonna pause share for a minute. I wanna take you, oh no, okay. Okay, I wanna take you for a second here to my scholarship online so I can show you what I'm talking about. Here, where's my share screen? Basically, I want to show you what you can do. Okay, that wasn't what I was trying to show you. Okay. Sometimes, okay, there we go. If you go to, there we go. I opened it up in getting it ready. Oh, they decided to take me out. When you finish the electronic portion and you put in all your household, okay, let's see how long it takes. I think sometimes it takes longer when I'm on it on screen share. There's a section called print and send documents. So let me move this out of the way. See this print and send documents tab? This I look at as your little portal to Stepup. So let's say you made a mistake and you put in intellectual disability. Some people did this for ADHD, which we know ADHD kids are really, really smart. But somebody accidentally did that, you can go in and choose a file and upload a personal statement saying, I accidentally chose the wrong disability category. Please instead consider this application under other health impairment. Or I accidentally chose the wrong grade for my child. Instead of sitting on customer service, this print and send documents tab, that's going to be like your little communication portal to Stepup. You won't see this right away though. You first have to put in your information. Then after you put in your information, your child's information, then the print and send documents tab will become available. When you get an eligibility letter, then you'll get new tabs like account activity. My Scholar Shop is where you can go shopping for educational materials. But account activity is a really important place. You're going to want to know account activity. It's going to take a minute since I'm on screen share. But basically, account activity will tell you your available balance over here. And more importantly, your FES student ID number. This FES student ID number is very important. Your school will need that in order to request funds on the quarterly basis. So when you get your actual, right now, I want to show you something. Right now, my scholarship status even though I'm renewal, I got it last year for one son and one of my children were waitlisted. I only have an eligibility letter and I only have eligible for award. When the funding goes through and the Florida Department of Education finishes their cross-check and makes sure my child's not in public school and releases the funds, then this status will change to awarded, and this will be an award letter, not an eligibility letter. I want to take you over here for a second because a lot of people get confused here where it says request matrix review. Aviva, you can see my screen? Everything's, yeah. This is what I was saying before. If you have a child with very severe disabilities, you can checkbox it. If your child is just a typical child in a mainstream school, don't checkbox it because that means you're asking to meet with the district and try to review your child's information to get additional funding. And again, it does not apply for most people. So again, this is where if let's say you finished your application and you're like, I'm not sure if what's happening with my scholarship status will let you know. If it's pending, it means it's processing. If it's on hold, it means that you're missing documentation. But again, print and send documents is your little portal to send documents. And by the way, just a little trick, when you choose a file, you must then click underneath where it says upload documents and wait like 10 seconds. It takes a little bit for the documents to load, but once it loads, you should see it on the bottom. My scholarship, like I said, and then contact us. I never tried it because I think print and send documents is my way of, but you could try this. I've never tried it. Maybe I might just send a message tonight just to see what goes on over here. So this is the portal. I'm going to go back in the chat.
Also, Malka, there's a chat as well in the red. Now it's offline.
Yeah, so that chat is what I was talking about where you can set that offline chat now is that email that you can get questions answered. If a child is, someone asked a very good question. This comes up a lot. If your child is 4 and the child doesn't have a disability, then you have to wait till they're 5. That's when they can get the school age one. This is only for children. 3 is only for children with a disability. So there's nothing yet for a younger child. I think, okay. I will say that the other kind of funding that we're going to talk about is also for disability. And then there's local funding if your child is coming from public school, then there's also funding. I'm just going to go back to Child Find because I think this one is really, really important. And it's something that Teach Florida is doing some work on right now. And I want to share with you because some people have heard of Child Find. Many people have not. There is federal funding and there's a federal law that says the district has an obligation to find students with disabilities and to provide evaluations for them. And right now the system in Florida is not working. When people come from New York and New Jersey, you'll see they often have an IEP and evaluation, and it seems to come by so easily for them. And in Florida, we don't see this as much. And it's partially because the districts are really not being accountable for this process. And some of the work at Teach Florida right now is we're working with a national consulting firm to try to get this funding flowing for our families. Because really the process should be, a lot of people have heard of early steps. So a child 0 to 3 who has an issue, they work with a state agency that gives them support. And this is all free, and they can even give you different services like speech and OT. They come to your home. Oftentimes you'll go to a center. Then when a child goes to preschool, they will often say to a parent, well, are you choosing a private or a public option? If you say I'm using for sure going to a private option, then they'll say good luck. If you say I'm considering both of my options, either private or public, then they'll conduct an evaluation and I'll give you an IEP. An evaluation is just going to determine if there is a disability category that would be like a preschool age category. If they suspect that, okay, so that's for a child with a disability. Now, the IEP says what services the child will get if they stay in a public option. Now, most parents are not really looking to keep them in public school unless it's more severe, and then that's great, and they get the services listed in the IEP. If the IEP itself, though, when you get an identified disability through the district, your child generates federal funding of about $1,700. it does not go to you specifically, but it goes to a big pot of federal funding for children with special needs. And the way it works is that the private schools get a proportion of that amount. So let's say the public schools have 100 students identified. I'm giving you a very small number. And we have 10 students identified. We get 10% of whatever the large pot of federal funds are to our private schools, which means that in some states, they have so many children identified through the district and they generate those federal funds that private schools get teachers, OTs, and speech therapists to come to the school paid for by these funds. And we know in Florida, all the services are being paid for out of pocket right now. Even tutoring, these particular services are not for a particular specific student. They're for private schools to utilize. And right now in Florida, we're not getting our share at all. We're like identifying about 1% of students. In general, about 10% of students generally have some sort of disability. We're only at 1%. So what I am encouraging our families this year is if you have a child in preschool that you suspect has a disability, I'm going to guide the school of what you need to do, who you need to call to get yourself an evaluation, and not an IEP, because if you're already a private school student, it's going to be called like an ISP, a service plan, but it will list on there the services that you would get through the district. Right now, the services that you get called the equitable services, they're not that great because we don't have a lot of funding going towards this pot of federal money. So they give us very minimal services. But in New York, first of all, they give a lot more money per student in the public school, so they give a lot more for private. So that's just something different in New York and New Jersey. But not only that, if we were to increase our share of funds going into this pot, we can start asking for those better services. When your child gets that ISP and your child goes through this process, your child would get something separate, not just this child find that we get money to spend, but your child will get specific private, in your private school, you will get district services. So I know, for example, in Palm Beach, they offer speech, language, and reading services, but they do it in a group. If we had more money, we could potentially ask for small group or one-to-one support for children who have a lot of needs. So there's a lot of opportunity to expand our share of federal funds. And this year, I'm going to help our schools by getting preschool students to get evaluated through the district, but helping you and supporting you because the districts can be challenging at times. So that's just something I want you to be aware of and know that is out there for your family. How can I help you? So one thing is, if you're denied, sometimes there are clerical reasons. Sometimes they don't like the disability category and you need a different document. You can reach out to me. I'm going to give you the webpage that you can access, and you can ask me a question or contact me. Generally, when you send me an email, if I see that your question is going to be easier just to speak over the phone, then I'll just contact you, or I'll give you my phone number. Sometimes I can easily answer your question by email. But basically, we have a webpage. I'm going to show you the webpage. I'm going to take you there. I try to put all the information about scholarships here, even though Stepup has an amazing site that could be a little bit overwhelming. So here's where you can ask me a question. Send me a quick question here. Here's where I tell you about the different scholarships. One, like I say, the disability one is here. I have the links for the application here. I have the whole disability list here. Like I say, there's a lot of different areas that you can look at. I have a whole section dedicated to if you click here, I have a whole separate web page about spending the scholarship funds, specifically the one that is an ESA, an educational savings account, because that one you have to spend. The voucher is very easy. You just on a quarterly basis, you just say, yes, I'm verifying the payment. But this one, there are different documents you have to fill out to utilize the funds. You can check your eligibility. Let's say after this, I just gave you a lot of information, but it's kind of spinning in your head. You can go on here and check if you a disability. Am I eligible? Are you a Florida resident? Yes. Age 3 to 22? Yes. Child attends a private or homeschool? Yes. And then here is the disability categories. And then if you fall into any of these, yes, it takes you back to the application. Okay, I'm going to reset. Here's where you can get the instructions for siblings. There's a whole different way that you're going to apply for the siblings, for the income-based scholarship. So I have the process for Stepup and I have the process for AAA. So Stepup, there's like very specific things that you follow step by step, you're going to get to the right place. Okay. Now, I also do the trainings, like I said, and this is the handbook in the Q&A here. You can click here and get information directly from Stepup and AAA about the different provisions. And then again, I put my webpage here as well. I'm going to stop share. I know that was a lot of information. And I would love to give you a chance to, go ahead and put anything in the chat or unmute yourself and ask a question. Or like I say, if you feel more comfortable to contact me later by email, that's okay. So we're open for Q&A for anybody that's still awake. I know it's 9:26.
Malka,
Let me put my contact information in the chat. Go ahead, Aviva.
Just want to know, like, how, I mean, you've helped us as well, and sitting in this, with you guys, with us. Just wondering how we could help guide the parents when they come to us like me and say, help.
Yes, so the demo videos are the first place to start. As soon as you're about to say help, open up the demo video. It will show you how to set up your account. It's specific for Stepup. AAA, I think, is a little more self-explanatory in a way. When you go on to AAA, I can show you, we can take a minute now, I can take you on to AAA. But for Stepup, like I say, the demo videos, it's a really good question, is your first place to start. Then my webpage, I would say, you can go on to Stepup and AAA. I'm not trying to say I'm better than them because they are incredible and I work with them very closely. But you can go on to the webpage that I created, which I will share with you in these slides. Like I said, we'll have the recording, we'll have everything for you. And you could submit a question or kind of check out the information. Like I say, Stepup has a great chat of its own. But yeah, I mean, after that, you can definitely email me. Yeah, I mean, like I say, it's going to take some time to learn the process. The best thing to do, I know for myself, the way I learned is that I applied online. And then when I went on, I had a more familiarity of like, okay, what are some of the things that I don't understand? So now I know what to ask. I would kind of save up my questions and ask like 5 different questions on the chat. And I still have questions that I'm asking. There's no question that that's silly. I really, sometimes I'll think I'm giving a presentation and like 6 more questions come up in my mind. So yeah, like I say, would you want to take a look at AAA for a second also while we have a moment? No, we have like 2 more minutes. I just shared my email address directly. I'm going to share a screen for a minute and take you to AAA. Just have to always remember how to get off my screen. There we go. So AA. You go to AAA, you want to go to make sure you're in Florida. So I happen to be, it's already saved on my computer, but make sure you go to Florida to get the right information. Right now, the disability-based scholarship is closed, so it's just the income-based scholarship. They have an online application and they also still have a paper application if that's your preference. One thing that gets people a little confused is when you get on here, they first ask you for the survey. They kind of do what we did with our eligibility. They want to make sure you live in Florida. Does the household live in Florida? Yes. Again, we're doing the income one right now, but it's similar with what they do for the disability. Disability-based, you see, closed. So let's say we say income. Is your Florida student entering kindergarten through 12th? Because again, this one is school age. Yes. And will your Florida student be between required ages to attend school in Florida on or before September 1st? Again, they have to follow the state law that says September 1st, 5 entering kindergarten or above. Again, you could be new military, new not military, or renewing. Let's just say we're new and we're not military because that's generally where people are. And this one is figure out your household size and income. And I would always put yes or below. Even if you're not sure, just put yes if you want to get onto the scholarship. And if this question is confusing, I don't know why they have this here. Is your household and student otherwise eligible? And you want to say, no, they've not been disqualified from the program. And to get to the scholarship, now this here is where you access the application. And you go to continue. So I would say that getting onto AAA is a little confusing, but the application itself is not so confusing because you do everything. Well, I don't know. You know what? I think every time you do something the first time, basically you create a profile and then you have to add, you go down here and get started. And you start adding in information. You open up and you put in first your household information. You see a household application. Okay, maybe AAA is just as confusing as Stepup. Household application, open. You put in your information, you and your husband's information, your spouse. And then the student applications, you add one for each of the students that you want on the application. And in what the difference between AAA and Stepup, though, to keep in mind, is they actually have embedded the documents in the application.
Can I ask you a question for the people and for me? So you said earlier to go online tomorrow morning or whatever and start applying. So that's great. So does the child have to be 3 in order to apply, or could they apply when they're 2 or something to wait to get on?
Yeah, as soon as you put in the birthday, they calculate that if it's by September, if you put in September 2nd, they're going to say, sorry, your child's ineligible. But if you put in you could apply when your child is 2, as long as they see it's a September 1st birthday. That's a really good question. Aviva, somebody's having trouble with the chat. It's not updating. Maybe there's a way to share on the WhatsApp group or through the school, my email address. Because there's always, like when it comes to things like people who don't have a visa or people who have, maybe the family is getting separated or someone's divorced, there's definitely things that you definitely does not just, I'll figure that out. Definitely feel free to ask those questions.
What am I giving, your email?
Yeah, my email address is perfect. And again, I don't mind speaking over the phone if I feel like it's something that would just be easier to be over the phone. But sometimes it's just easier to WhatsApp. I WhatsApp a lot. I have people send me screenshots. Here's what my screen looks like. Go ahead and help me. It's just, and I can help you from there.
Do you want me to share your phone number or no?
Not my phone number or the email address, and then we'll start from there if need be. For those of you, I know it's past 9:30. If you want to stay on, feel free. Otherwise, have a wonderful night. And I look forward to assisting you, or hopefully if this information is not helpful to you, if you know somebody else that it could be helpful to, please feel free to share this information or just the fact that there's somebody to contact about this information.
Okay, so I'm going to put your email on all the chat.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Is there any other questions, Aviva, that I can answer before we go?
Just everybody go to Malka. Do it.
And then in a few months, I'm going to send you all back to Aviva, so it's going to be perfect. All right. So I usually like to send out the recording and the slides the next day, so I should be able to get that to you tomorrow. Have a wonderful night. Thank you for attending.
Thank you, Malka.
Bye.
Bye.